Singing to Allah, to my Yah, to my Yah. Let the judgment run down like the waters, and the righteousness flow as the streams. Let Yahweh's name be exalted in the high praises of my Elohim. Let the judgment run down like the waters, and the righteousness flow as the streams. Let Yahweh's name be exalted in the high praises of my Elohim. Yo, Yah come in the volume of the book. His word is life, so we got the killers shook. Wisdom was in the chief places from the beginning to enlighten the sons of men. But the fighting among twins ushered in sin, and brothers been beefing ever since. Yah come in the volume of the book by the truth and sell it not. So we got these robbers out here shook. Understanding is departing from evil. He flooded the earth once and there'll be no sequel, but the fire next time. That's why I'm the messenger refined in the fire of affliction, opening your eyes to the foolish ways and the devil's contradictions. Singing to Allah, to my Yah, to my Yah. Let the judgment run down like the waters, and the righteousness flow as the streams. Let Yahweh's name be exalted in the high praises of my Elohim. Let the judgment run down like the waters, and the righteousness flow as the streams. Let Yahweh's name be exalted in the high praises of my Elohim.
I praise John summer and winter season, and dismiss the statues was taught by these heathens. Y'all give me the reason to call them out, only misleading and treasons. A man's heart that was given to these beastlings, no one not even. Back to seeking the heart of Yah. 7 is what he requires for the draw silver to be polished by fire. Constantly led by my Elohim, who visits messengers through visions or a dream. Slaves that were formerly your king will one day rise and seek the purpose of their being. The feeling is serene. The Israel is a prince who has power with Elohim and man. And no longer do we advance or realize the reaches of the stars upon the shoulder, but promotion coming by Yah, who can take it thus far. Give him YAH'S not salat to the Almighty Yah.
Let the judgment run down like the waters, and the righteousness flow as the streams. Let Yahweh's name be exalted in the high praises of my Elohim. Let the judgment run down like the waters, and the righteousness flow as the streams. Let Yahweh's name be exalted in the high praises of my Elohim. Hallelujah. Singing to Allah, to my Yah, to my Yah. Yeah. Live free. Come on. Fourth tribe. For 100 centuries. Yeah. Let's go. Take a look at my soul. Nothing left.
Shalom. Shalom, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, giving all praise and honor to the Holy One of Israel, to the Creator of the heaven, the earth, the sea, and all that is therein is, by saying hallelujah. Praise the mighty Yah. Yah is righteous, Yah is holy, and let Yahweh be magnified. Once again, the Creator has allowed us to come before you another day, bringing to you his great, holy, and exalted words, even the words of truth. My name is Mowreh IshYAH of the house of Israel, located right here in Cincinnati, Ohio, 2330 Kemper Lane, bringing to you nothing but the truth. And yes, it is true. All we're going to do is tell you the truth, for Yah ordained me to tell you the truth. And this is what I'm going to do. And who is this Yah? Yah is the creator of the heaven, the earth, the sea, and all that is therein is. Yah is the Elohim of our fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzhak, and YIsraEL, whom you may know as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yah is our king, he's our judge, he's our lawgiver, and Yah is our only Savior, and not just of Israel, Yah is the Savior of the world. And I praise the mighty Yah for once again giving us this great and holy opportunity to come before you with his great words. This evening, this day, we will be talking about the importance of 40. What relevance do it have to our 400-year captivity? Over the weekend, we brought you the relevance of 20. Then the second day of the week, we brought to you the relevance of 10. And this day, we will bring to you the relevance of 40. Of course, we brought this before you before, letting you know how important 40 is, what 40 represents. But here we want you to know something a little bit different about 40. Even though yesterday we brought to your attention in dealing with the 10th, that 10 times, 10 times 40, from 1619 until now, bring us to 400 years. So not only you see it in 2020, but also 10 times 40. And why was 10 so important? Because we brought to your attention that nobody else is bringing to you how important the 10th generation is. And who is in this 10th generation? And what Yahweh would do in the 10th generation, since the 10th belonged unto him. But there's no way to get there unless you understand 40. Let me show you certain things you might need to know about 40. But in particularly about the generations and what Yahweh would do to generations to bring about judgment. And we know according to the scriptures that Yahweh said he will judge this nation. We know that he said he will judge these people. But little do our people know, they really don't know how. And then for the most part, they don't even know when. All they know is something that's supposed to happen. But when it's supposed to happen, how it's supposed to happen, they just don't know. So oftentimes it's not talked about. Even though, right as we speak, the world, those that don't even know they Israel, is talking about 400 years of our captivity. And where did they get this from? Well, it's only recorded really one place, and that's the scriptures. And the only other places recorded is in history. But they don't understand the connection. And here we are concerning these generations. I just want you to see what Yahweh see and how he see things. And we're going to open up our books first to Numbers 32. It will make things a little bit easier if I hit my book, my scriptures. In the book of Numbers 32, we're going to start there. And watch what this says. And I'm going to read the 10th verse. And Yahweh's anger was kindled the same time, and he swore, saying, surely none of the men that came up out of Egypt, from 20 years old and upward, shall see the land which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, because they have not wholly followed me. Now here it is. These are people that came out of Egypt. All the people that came out of Egypt. So today we find ourselves in what is known as modern Egypt. For Egypt just means bondage. So imagine our people today coming out of the bondage that they are under today. Now let's read this. Surely none of the men that came up out of Egypt, bondage, from 20 years old and upward, shall see the land which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, because they have not wholly followed me. And ask yourself, are you wholly following the Most High? Or are you allowing yourself to be caught up with other things, other people, vanities, and things that profit not? The only thing you should be caught up in is your relationship and your ability to serve Yahweh with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your might. And it's impossible to do that if you're not wholly following him. But there were two who did. That was above 20 years old. Watch what it says in the 12th verse. Save Caleb, the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, and Yehoshua, the son of Nun, for they have wholly followed Yahweh. And watch what Yahweh says. And Yahweh's anger was kindled against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness 40 years, until all the generation that had done evil in the sight of Yahweh was consumed. In other words, all those that was 20 years old and above, they all didn't die at once. It took 40 years for this generation. In 40 years, that's multiple generations. That's not just one generation. But Yahweh would destroy them within the confines of 40 years. But the question is, why 40? Well, 40 represents Yahweh's judgment. And Yahweh said he will be bringing judgment back to the earth. He will judge the various people that we are under. But Yahweh also said he will judge us. Even though many people waiting till they get to the land to keep the law, Yahweh is making it crystal clear that all those that came out of Egypt, they died in the wilderness because they didn't wholly follow Yahweh. So what makes the people think today that when we come out of America and all the other places where Yahweh scattered our people, what make them believe that they will see the promised land? Is it because they are wholly following Yahweh? Or are they just arrogantly, pridefully, under the erroneous impression that they will be saved? Because 40 it just don't represent judgment. 40 also represents Yahweh's divine test. In other words, Yahweh will test you. And that's what he did in the wilderness. But he didn't just do that in the wilderness. Let me show you how Yahweh also tested our people for 40 years. Because it's not just judgment, but it's also a test. Watch what it says in the book of Exodus 16. In the book of Exodus 16, and we're talking about 40, I want you to see what this says. In the book of Exodus 16, and we're going to start reading the 33rd verse, or the 34th verse. No, we'll start at 33. And Moses said, or 32, and Moshe said, this is the thing which Yahweh commands. Fill the number of it to be kept for your generations. And we talked about generations. That they may see the bread which Yahweh have fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you forth out of the land of Egypt. And Moshe said to Aaron, take a pot, put an omer full of manna therein, lay it up before Yahweh to be kept for your generations. As Yahweh commanded Moshe, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Israel did eat manna 40 years until they came to a land inhabited. They did eat manna until they came to the borders of the land of Canaan. And guess what they put up? Exactly what we dealt with yesterday, the 36th verse. Now, the omer is the 10th part of an ephah. And we dealt with the 10th. So you can see the 10th and the 40 does have a great relationship with one another and very relevant. It should be relevant to our people today. Because if it is true what Yahweh said, They monitor 40 years, and it is true. And if it is true that our people wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, so all that generation can die out 10 times over, it's 400 years. And the 10 belong unto Yahweh. So if 40 represents judgment, it represents Yahweh's divine test, then that will bring us to now. And the truth is, we've been telling you that 400 years is just a test anyway. This whole time. And the generation is very important to know the time. Because certain things supposed to happen in these generations, as we brought to you yesterday. But the most important thing you want to know today is that this is how Yahweh judge, and this is how Yahweh will prove you, test you, to see what's in your heart, to see if you're going to wholly follow him. And today, many of our people still allow themselves to be bogged down with things that profit them not. Still haven't learned, even though we're all the way to the end. Of course, many don't even believe we're at the end anyway. So I guess they not bogged down with nothing. But watch what it says in Deuteronomy 8th chapter, so you can see what I'm telling you is the truth. Watch what it says, Deuteronomy the 8th chapter. In the book of Deuteronomy, the 8th chapter, we're going to start reading at the second verse. And you shall remember all the way which Yahweh your Elohim led you these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble you, to prove you, and to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. This is what this whole thing was about. That's why many generations had to be destroyed. And look at our people today. Look at the people that's actually supposed to go into the wilderness today. And look at those who say they know the Most High. Do you honestly believe that you are prepared and ready to meet your Maker? Because that's exactly what the wilderness is all about. Watch what the Creator said in the 3rd verse. And he humbled you. How did he do that? And allowed you to hunger. As soon as our people is one thing to stop yourself from eating. But it's a whole nother thing when you want to eat, you desire to eat, and you can't. So a lot of people might fast today. But what is a fast? What will you do when a fast is called for you when you want to eat? and fed you with manna, which you knew not. Neither did your fathers know. And you know how it is. When we start eating something we don't know anything about, we typically don't like, I don't like this, I don't want this. And so we begin to be very unappreciative. And that was the only food we had at the time. That he might make you know, and this is what he wanted you to know, that man does not live by bread only, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahweh does man live. And if this is true, and you desire to see the promised land, then you must begin to alter your mind, alter your heart, and begin to start thinking about your future and the thing you want to know about your future. The mindset you want to develop for the future, but you got to develop it now, is that you don't live just by bread. So I'm not going to concern myself when there's no food. I'm not going to concern myself when I get hungry. I'm not going to get bothered when I'm thirsty. Because that ain't how I live only anyway. I live by every word that proceeded out of the mouth of Yahweh. That's how I live. And I'm going to get caught up in that. Your clothing became not old upon you, neither did your foot swell these 40 years. And why 40? Because it was a test. Why 40? Because it was judgment. Why 40? Because 40 is the fifth most important number in the scriptures. 40 is the order of 5. And 5 is Yahweh's increase. That's why 40 is very relevant. Because Yahweh wants to see how blessed you really are. How long can you endure? And will you trust in him? You shall also consider in your heart that as a man chastens his son, so Yahweh, your Elohim, chastens you. And how do Yahweh do that? I just want to give people insight. See, many of our people don't know the ways of Yahweh. So we don't know. Most people, they assume when bad things happen to them, it's just the other person being wicked. No. Even though Yahweh will use other people as an instrument to get you bothered, to make you mad, to make you sad. But you don't realize it's just a test anyway. This is just a test. Because this is what Yahweh do as a father chastening his son. Yahweh will chasten you. He will correct you. And he will correct you by doing things to see where you're really at, how you're developing, how thick your skin is, how solid your heart is, and if you're going to wholly follow him. And he will use this 40 to bring out your good or your evil. To see if you're going to be blessed or cursed. Because 40 is a test, but it's also judgment. And I want you to see that. But just like we read, 40 years, the whole generation had to die out. Because this is how generations go. Generations either from father to son. But when there's no measuring, you don't even know who your father is. As many of our people don't even know. Then you got to know how Yahweh will use his divine order, divine test, his divine judgment to prove and test you. Watch this in the book of Exodus, the 1st chapter. The 1st verse. Now these are the children of Israel, the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt. Every man in his household came with Jacob. Reuben and Simeon and Levi and Yehuda. Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin. Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The only one missing from this count is Joseph. And Joseph will be number 7. And why number 7? Because he will be right before his brother Benjamin, who had the same mother as him. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls. For Joseph was in Egypt all ready. 6th verse. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and grew exceedingly mighty. And the land was filled with them. Now, how many generations you think went past? Because watch what it says. 8th verse. And now there rose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not yourself. That would have took a lot of generations not to know yourself. Yourself was second to Pharaoh. Yourself was mighty in Egypt. Yourself ruled Egypt from the age of 30 all the way to his death, which is 110. So it would have took a lot to forget a man like yourself. So most of Joseph years, he went into Egypt at the age of 17 years old. Our people sojourned in Egypt 430 years. So most of his life, he lived in Egypt. And, of course, he would die in Egypt. And when he died, and his brothers died, and all that generation died, that's when they forgot yourself, and that's when the children of Israel began to have problems. And I may add, this is well short of being in the land of their enemies for 400 years, being afflicted, as the vision and dream of Abraham talk about. In Genesis, the 15th chapter. But all that generation had died out. Just like all the generation that came out of Egypt died out. But in Egypt, when they came out, all it took is 40 years for everybody to die out. From 20 years old and above. You also find this in the book of Deuteronomy, the 2nd chapter, and watch what it says. Deuteronomy 2. And this is what it says. Because 40 is not just a test, it's also judgment. And you'll see how relevant it is to us today. In the book of Deuteronomy, the 2nd chapter, watch what it says. The 14th verse. And the space in which we came from Kadesh Barnea until we had come over the brook Zered was 38 years, until all the generation of the men of war was wasted out from among the hosts, as Yahweh swore to them. For indeed the hand of Yahweh was against them to destroy them from among the hosts until they were consumed. So it came to pass, when all the men of war were consumed and dead from among the people, that Yahweh spoke to me, saying, you are to pass over through Ar, the coast of Moab, this day. In other words, see how they waited till all the generations that came out of Egypt died. Because Yahweh had swore, Yahweh had promised that they would not see this land. You'll read the same thing in the same Deuteronomy, the 2nd chapter, the verse 6 and 7. Watch what it says. 6 and 7. Deuteronomy 2. You shall buy food from them for money, talking about Esau, that you may eat. You shall also buy water from them for money, that you may drink. For Yahweh, your Elohim, has blessed you in all the work of your hands. And he knows you're walking through this great wilderness. These 40 years, Yahweh, your Elohim, has been with you, and you have lacked nothing. Even though in that wilderness, our people didn't lack nothing, our people complained every step of the way and would tempt Yahweh 10 different times. And they didn't lack nothing. But you would have thought they lacked everything. So what would Yahweh do? Yahweh would do such a thing like what he did in the book of Genesis. And before I go to Genesis, I want you to see this also. I want you to see how Yahweh also, and this is something I always tell people, and then we get so confused and caught up. I let people know Yahweh got a heart. Yahweh got feelings. Yahweh have a mind. Yahweh get angry and get happy and get sad. Yahweh get all these things. Yahweh get jealous. And then we get all bent out of shape, not realizing we done bent Yahweh all out of shape. Ten times over. Look how Yahweh described the way he feels. Watch this. We're going to start at Psalm 95:1. Oh, come, let us sing unto Yahweh. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving and make a joyful noise unto him with psalms. In other words, why can't we do that? In other words, this is what the psalmist is saying. Let's sing to Yahweh. Let's stop fussing. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Stop complaining. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving. Let's stop being unappreciative and make a joyful noise unto him with songs. Let's stop speaking harshly and rashly. For Yahweh is a great Elohim, a great king above all Elohims. In his hand are the deep places of the earth. The strength of the hills is his also. The sea is his, and he made it. His hand formed the dry land. Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before Yahweh, our maker. For he is our Elohim, and we are the people of his pasture, the sheep of his hand. Today, if you will, hear his voice. And you got to listen for the voice of Yahweh. The voice of Yahweh is in his word. We got to change the way we think. We got to change our mind. We must change our heart. Harden not your heart, as in the provocation, and as in the day of temptation in the wilderness. In other words, all Yahweh had to do is provoke you. But you provoked him. You might have went a few days without water, went a few days without eating, had to eat manna for 40 years, and then you will provoke Yahweh to anger. You will harden your heart and start tailbearing, start fighting with one another, start pointing the finger at one another. Yeah, these are the people that we descended from. And guess what we do today? We harden our hearts, as in the provocation. We cannot overcome this great wicked heart. Watch what it says, because we're going to see how Yahweh actually feel. Ninth verse. When your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my work. 40 years long was I grieved with this generation, and said, it is a people that do err in their heart, and they have not known my ways, to whom I swore in my wrath that they should not enter into my rest. And here today, who desire to enter into the rest of Yahweh? Little do people know, 1979, from that point on, 40 years later, bring us to now. Which is the 10th generation. Which is the 400th year. Ten times over. 20 times 20. And still to this day, we refuse to have a heart and a mind and a spirit to enter into Yahweh's rest. And what is that? Jerusalem. Jerusalem means peace. It means rest. It means shalom. But yet, we still continue to bicker, to fight one another. Then when this happens, this is when things get serious, but then it's too late. Watch what it says in the book of Genesis, the 7th chapter. In the book of Genesis, the 7th chapter, the very first verse, watch what it says. And Yahweh said unto Noah, come you and all your household into the ark, for you have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Because Yahweh is looking for the righteous in all generations. So when you get mad at somebody, just think about how mad Yahweh, the wrath of Yahweh that he had with our people in their generation. Of every clean beast you shall take to you by sevens, the male and his female, and of the beasts that are not clean by two, the male and his female. Of fowls also of the air by sevens, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And every living substance that I've made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. Now you think they thought that Yahweh would do such a thing? I'm sure they didn't. But he did it. And he gave them 40 days and 40 nights. But they would not listen. And these 40 days and 40 nights, these 40 years, is still
90 seconds
upon our people this day. Look what happened in the book of Numbers, the 14th chapter. See, 40 should not be some type of sentence
60 seconds.
of destruction. And oftentimes it is because it's a test. And for the most part, our people typically fail the test. But you shouldn't have to fail the test. This is a test of your heart. This is a test of your will. This is a test of your spirit. And this is judgment. So therefore,
10 seconds.
you have to look past all the various instruments that will stop you, that will enable you, that will bring about some type of obstacle from your eyes getting the prize. And the prize should always be the promised land. In the book of Numbers 14, watch what it says. And I'm going to start reading at the 26th verse. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, how long shall I bear with this evil congregation, which murmur against me? I've heard their murmurings of the children of Israel, which they murmur against me, and Yahweh still hear today. Say to them, as truly as I live, says Yahweh, as you have spoken in my ears, so will I do to you. Your carcasses shall fall in the wilderness, and all that were numbered of you, according to your whole number, from 20 years old and upward, which have murmured against me. Doubtless you shall not come into the land, concerning which I swore to make you dwell therein, save Caleb the son of Jephunneh, and Yehoshua the son of Nun. But your little ones, which you said should be a prey, them will I bring in, and they shall know the land which you have despised. But as for you, your carcasses, they shall fall in the wilderness, and your children shall wander in the wilderness 40 years, and bear your whoredoms, until your carcasses are wasted in the wilderness. After the number of days which you search the land, even 40 days, each day for a year, you bear your iniquities, even 40 years, and you shall know my breach of promise. And what was his breach of promise? I promise you the land, but because of your breach, because of your iniquities, you're not going to see that land. And they didn't. I, Yahweh, have said, I will surely do it to all this evil congregation that are gathered together against me. In this wilderness they shall be consumed, and there they shall die. And of course, they did. And even that great pronouncement did not stop the people from still being evil, harden their hearts. In doing what was wrong in the eyes of Yahweh. And all you got to do is ask yourself, what is going to stop you from sliding? What will stop you from being stiff-necked and hard-hearted? When will your heart become soft? When will you put your mind not on your grief, but the grief of Yahweh? Not on your anger, but the anger of Yahweh. Not on your disgust, but the disgust of Yahweh. We think too much about ourselves, and we care too much about our own feelings and emotions. Because if we be honest and true to ourselves, there's only one we should be thinking about, and that is Yahweh. And why? Why shouldn't you be thinking about yourself? You didn't even make yourself. You don't even know yourself. But what you should know is your maker. And let me show you what you should know. In the book of Job, the 1st chapter. This is what you should know. This is what should be on your mind every day. Watch what it says in the book of Job, the 1st chapter. And I'm going to read and make that Job 2. Job, the 2nd chapter. And I'm going to read the 9th verse. Now let's start at 6. And Yahweh said to Satan, behold, he is in your hand, but save his life. So went Satan forth from the presence of Yahweh, smote Job with grievous boils, from the sole of his head to his crown, sole of his foot to his crown. And he took him a potsherd to scrape himself therewith, and he sat down among the ashes. Then said his wife to him, do you still retain your integrity? Curse Elohim and die. In other words, one can say, oh man, she's wicked. This woman was wicked. Why would she say such a thing? This woman is not right. This woman have a bad spirit. This woman is no one that anyone should be around. But at the end of the day, this was Job's wife. Job knew who he was marrying. And at the end of the day, all she was at this moment in time is an instrument of Yahweh, an instrument of Elohim, an instrument that Yahweh will allow Satan to use to test him. So while you judging Job's wife, mind on Job's wife, minding on her conduct, you missing the whole point. Watch what it says. Watch what Job said. But he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women speaks. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of Elohim? And shall we not receive evil? And all this did not Job sin with his lips. In other words, Job understood that evil gonna come to your doors, you're gonna receive it. So you gonna put your mind to a man that ain't even make evil, ain't created evil, can't control evil? But when good come, you ain't looking at no man. You looking at yourself, and maybe sometimes you'll look at the Most High. But you got to look at the Most High for all things. So don't allow yourself to be caught up, because Yahweh will test you as he did Job. Yahweh will judge you as he did Job. This was Job's beginning. But watch what his end was in the book of Job 42. In the book of Job 42, watch what it says. The 12th verse. So Yahweh blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning. That was just the beginning. People sad for Job. Oh, you lost your kids, you lost your family, you lost it. This man was more blessed in the end than he was in the beginning. For he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 she donkeys. He had also 7 sons and 3 daughters. And he called the name of the first Jemimah, the name of the second Keziah, the name of the third Karen Hapuk. And in all the land were no women found so fair as the daughters of Job. And their father gave them an inheritance among their brothers, because this is how rich he was. And after this lived Job 140 years, and saw his sons and his sons' sons, even 4 generations. So Job died being old and full of days. That's what Job would do. This is how blessed he was. But why is this relevant? Because 40 is just a test. But 40 is also judgment. Show you how Yahweh would test. Show you how Yahweh would judge. Speaking of 40, watch what it says in the book of Genesis, the 25th chapter. In the book of Genesis 25, this is what it says. And I'm going to start reading let's start at the 17th verse and watch what it says, or 16th verse. These, Genesis 25:16, these are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names, by their towns, by their councils, 12 princes according to their nations. And these are the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years, lived a long time. And he gave up the ghost and died, and was gathered to his people. And they dwelt from Havilah to Shur, that is before Egypt, as you go toward Assyria. And he died in the presence of all his brethren. Now these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begot Isaac. And watch the 20th verse. And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel, the Syrian of Padan Aram, the sister to Laban and Syrian, the Syrian. And Isaac prayed to Yahweh for his wife because she was barren. But Isaac didn't take his wife until he was 40 years old. And why? Because Yahweh would test his servant. How did he test Abraham? Abraham didn't have a son until he was, or his wife didn't have him a son until she was 100 years old. Sarah. That's how Yahweh would test. You don't think during that time he felt some kind of way? Sure he did. But he passed the test. Here it is. We get a little test and we go haywire. And his wife was tested 100 years. But 40 years, that because it's a test. That's when he got a wife. Will you wait 40 years for your wife? Watch what it says, Genesis 26. Not just him. The 34th verse. And Esau was 40 years old when he took to wife Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, Bashema, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, which were a grief of mine to Isaac and to Rebekah. In other words, even though this one he took his wife, all this did was grieve Isaac and Rebekah. Because he married a Hittite. And these people were wicked, even during the time of Isaac and Rebekah. Because 40 is a test, but it's also judgment. Look how Yahweh would test Moses in the book of Exodus 34. And you don't think Yahweh is testing you? $40 years, 10 times over? And what is 40 years, 10 times over? 400 years. In the book of Exodus 34. How would Yahweh test Moses? In the book of Exodus 34. 27th verse. And Yahweh said to Moshe, write you these words, for after the tenor of these words, I've made a covenant with you and with Israel. And he was there with Yahweh 40 days and 40 nights. He did neither eat bread nor drink water. And he wrote upon the tables of the words of the covenant the 10 commandments. Because Yahweh tested him twice. And look what happened the second time that Yahweh would test Moses in the 29th verse. And it came to pass when Moshe came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tables of the testimony in Moshe's hand, because the first ones he broke. When he came down from the mountain, that Moshe knew not that the skin of his face shone while he talked with him. And when Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moshe, behold, the skin of his face shone, it was shining, and they were afraid to come. They were afraid to come near him. So just imagine coming in the presence of Yahweh. If Moses' face shined, what do you think Yahweh's face do? No wonder Yahweh said, man can't see his face and live. We couldn't even see Moses' face. Watch what it says. And Moshe called to them, and Aaron and all the rulers of the congregation returned to him. And Moshe talked with them. And afterwards, all the children of Israel came near. And he gave them in commandment all that Yahweh had spoken with him in Mount Sinai. And until Moshe had finished speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. In other words, every time Moses spoke to them from this point on, he had to wear a veil. And why? Because his face was shining too much. But when Moshe went in before Yahweh to speak with him, he took the veil off until he came out. Because when he came out, he put the veil on. And he came out and spoke to the children of Israel that which he was commanded. And the children of Israel saw the face of Moshe, that the skin of Moshe's face shone. And Moshe put the veil upon the face again until he went in to speak with him, and him being Yahweh. Because Yahweh would test him. Yahweh would test our people. And at the end of the day, the judgment, the test of Yahweh, these 40 years, 10 times over, it only means really one thing anyway. And let me show you what Yahweh was trying to get our people to see in the days of old, and what he's trying to get you to see today. And you'll read it in the book of Deuteronomy, the 29th chapter. That's why the scriptures say, remember all the way in which I led you in this wilderness. Yahweh wanted you to remember that, because Yahweh would do that again. Yahweh would test you again. Yahweh will judge you again. Therefore, in the book of Deuteronomy 29, the very first verse, these are the words of the covenant which Yahweh commanded Moshe to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, besides the covenant which he made with them in Horeb. And when Yahweh would do this, it was the 40th year, because this is the time in which Moses would die. And this is the place in which Moses would die, in the land of Moab. And this is the last year they were in the wilderness. So here in the book of Genesis, Yahweh gave them 40 days and 40 nights, and they would die. Yahweh will have them search the land for 40 days, and they would sin and turn that into 40 years in the wilderness. And here is where Moses would die, in the land of Moab, in the 40th year. And he will be the last person in that many generations that will live, with the exception of Yehoshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. The second verse. And Moshe called to all Israel and said to them, you have seen all that Yahweh did before your eyes in the land of Egypt to Pharaoh, and to all his servants, and to all his land. The great temptations which your eyes have seen, the signs, and those great miracles. Yet Yahweh, even though you've seen it, has not given you a heart to perceive, and eyes to see, and ears to hear unto this day. In other words, he didn't even want you to understand this thing until the end. And when was the end? 40 years later. Now, look what I was doing. Look what I had for you. Look how I was going to bless you. Watch the 5th verse. And I've led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes have not grown old upon you, even though you complained and murmured. Your shoe has not grown old upon your foot, even though you brought me to grief. You have not eaten bread, neither have you drunk wine or strong drink, that you might know that I am Yahweh, your Elohim. And why would Yahweh do that? Because Yahweh wanted you to know. Yahweh wants us to know that man does not live by bread only, but Yahweh wants us to know man lives by every word that proceeded out of the mouth of Yahweh. So Yahweh would test our people this day, 40 years, 10 times over. And yes, we are coming to that end. Even though most of our people don't acknowledge it. Even from the beginning of time. And when we begin to count how long man has been on this earth since the time of Adam. And it's not hard when you understand and when you know generations. And from the time of Adam all the way up till this very day, you have 6,200 years. And I say, my goodness, that's a long time. 6,000, even though man will tell you, your heathens will tell you we've been here millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years. But no, 6,200 years. And then I would look. I was like, man, since Yahweh testing the world, since Yahweh will judge the world, and since 40 represents Yahweh's judgment and Yahweh's test, I'm curious. Do that have anything to do with 40? So I would divide 40 into 6,200, since it's 6,200 years since Adam. And that would be 155 years. In other words, equal, complete 40 years. So if you multiply 155 times 40, you're going to come to the date in which we are at today. 155, 40 times over. This is the test. This is the judgment of Yahweh. So turn your heart, turn your mind to Yahweh. Break up that fallow ground. Get rid of that stiff neck and wholly follow Yahweh. So until tomorrow, Yahweh love you, and so do I. Shalom.
I long for His Spirit. I yearn for His Spirit. I long for His Spirit. I yearn for the Spirit of Yah. All I need, the Spirit of Yah. All I breathe, the Spirit of Yah. Can't you see the Spirit of Yah? Wanna be in the Spirit of Yah. I long for His Spirit. I yearn for His Spirit. I long for His Spirit. I yearn for the Spirit of Yah. All I need, the Spirit of Yah. All I breathe, the Spirit of Yah. Can't you see the Spirit of Yah? Wanna be in the Spirit of Yah. I long for His Spirit. I yearn for His Spirit. I long for His Spirit. I yearn for the Spirit of Yah. All I need, the Spirit of Yah. All I breathe, the Spirit of Yah. Can't you see the Spirit of Yah? Wanna be in the Spirit of Yah. Kokma and Binye and Da'ath and night. Counsel to fear Yah and adore His light. These are the spirits we need in our life to walk uprightly, be pleasing His sight. I long for His Spirit. I yearn for His His Spirit I long for. His Spirit I yearn for. The Spirit of Yah, all I need. The Spirit of Yah, all I breathe. The Spirit of Yah, can't you see? The Spirit of Yah, wanna be in the Spirit of Yah. I long for His Spirit. I yearn for His Spirit. I long for His Spirit. I yearn for the Spirit of Yah. All I need, the Spirit of Yah. All I breathe, the Spirit of Yah. Can't you see? The Spirit of Yah, wanna be in the Spirit of Yah.